Good evening and welcome to the first Inside Government for the fall 2021 semester here at Cayuga Community College. And this is a program that is put on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as Win 89, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. For the last week or so, we have been holding a series of forums for candidates for the 2021 elections. We've held the 1st, 3rd, and 7th legislative district forums in the last 10 days. And next Thursday, we'll have another forum for the 11th legislative district, which is one of the 3 districts that exist within the city of Auburn. And we will have both candidates here that day as well. Tonight, though, we had hoped to bring you the forum for the 9th legislative district, which includes Moravia, Niles, Sempronius, and Summerhill. Unfortunately, legislator Mark Strong, who is running on the Republican and conservative lines, who was appointed in the last year to the seat vacated through the resignation of Charles Ripley last fall, has declined to participate in our forum. His opponent, Geraldine Germano-Yaw, who is on the Democratic and Working Families Party line, has agreed to participate. And as per our rules in the past that we've been using for 20 plus years, it seems like a lot longer, for electoral competitions from Congress to the New York State Senate, when one candidate decides to participate, but their opponent declines, the candidate who did agree to participate does get a 30-minute one-on-one interview with me. Keeping to that standard, we have Mr. Germano-Yaw, who is seeking this seat in the studio today. A position of a member of the county legislature is a part-time job. It has a salary of $13,500 per year. The 15-member legislature has 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 1 conservative, and 3 non-affiliated members, with half of the legislature up this year. So that does mean the control could change this January depending on these elections. Welcome. Welcome to be here. Thank you for agreeing to do this for the students and for the community and for the voters of the 9th legislative district.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I guess the most basic questions is, why are you running?
Well, I'm running because I have a lot of time on my hands now. My husband died 2 years ago, and I decided that I wanted to give something back to the community, and I've been a member of the Variance Board in the past in the town of Sempronius, and I'm recently on the Board of Assessment Review, but I thought that this would be a...
So while you haven't had elective office, you have
haven't had elective office.
You have served on some boards.
5 years as the president of the Tompkins Cortland Nurse Practitioner Association. 5 years.
Kind of went into my next question. So what is your profession?
My profession is I am a retired psychiatric and family nurse practitioner. I worked for the last 15 years of my work time at Tompkins County Mental Health Clinic in Ithaca, New York, commuted from Sempronius every day for 15 years. I would have kept working, except I got hit head-on by a pickup truck and broke my kneecap in 2010, so I couldn't drive anymore, and my husband had just retired, and he wasn't about to get up and take me to work in the morning, so he told me I needed to retire.
Then your husband, just so we say,
my husband,
Bruce Yaw, talented teacher in, the music is not my category, but I know he's a well-known teacher in Moravia.
Beloved teacher.
And so how long have you lived in Sempronius?
I moved to Sempronius when I was 26 years old, and I've lived there for 45 years.
And have you been involved in Democratic Party politics, or is this your first foray?
I've been the Democratic representative for the town of Sempronius for the past 10 years.
So Mr. Strong, who was appointed to this position in the last year, decided not to participate here, and that occurs, we usually think about every 2 or 3 years. It's rare, but it does occur, usually with congressional candidates once they're elected and they're incumbents. But will you be meeting, first of all, have you met him?
I have never met him. No, I've never met Mark.
So are there any forums in your district? You have 4 townships. Is there anything planned where you meet face-to-face for voters?
No, there's nothing planned as far as I know. This was the only opportunity that we would have had to meet.
Okay.
And I'm disappointed. I thought it would be nice to give the voters, both sides.
Well, let's talk about some of the issues that you think are out there. So what do you think is the biggest issue not necessarily for your district, but facing the county right now?
Well, I think that since COVID happened 2 years ago, we have learned that having broadband and having Wi-Fi for children was something that we hadn't anticipated that we would ever need, but because schools had to go remote, children had to somehow be connected to the school. And I have to say that they were very creative about their ways of doing it, driving buses to parking lots and having people,
But not the most productive
but
way
not
to
the
learn.
most productive, the most comfortable, and the most,
So for many, they talk about a digital divide, and sometimes it's the hardware which you don't have access to.
Right.
But many schools have Chromebooks and whatnot that they're getting out.
Yes.
But the bigger issue, especially for southern Cayuga County, is the only thing that comes to mind is that sound from AOL as you're
The
trying to get out the dial-up.
The dial-up
You
sound.
still have a large portion of your
We
district
do.
that does not. So has the county shifted money? Are school districts doing that?
I know that the money that was allotted from the COVID money from Washington, D.C., some of it was going towards broadband, and I was told that anything that had anything to do with children, that they were looking to spend the money on children. So this seems to be something that's important for
So
children.
not to get too far afield in COVID, we'll get to that, but there is, as you know, about $10 million that the county has appropriated some of it, may not have spent some of it, but mostly the new legislature come January 1st will be responsible for spending that money or setting priorities.
Right.
What do you see as the priorities of that $10 million or what's left of it?
I know there are some restrictions on how you can spend the money, so I guess it would depend on what the restrictions were, where the money was spent. But I really do think that giving back to the community is the most important way to spend the money. Finding ways to make attending school for children that have to go remote easier.
But do you see the county making an investment in, and this is both southern Cayuga County and northern Cayuga County, there are dead zones,
Yes.
for lack of a better
Right.
non-technical term, when it comes to access to the internet. So you still have members in the agricultural committee or community that have, when they have to file their paperwork with the Department of Ag, whether it's in Washington or Albany, get thrown off, and they have to start the process.
Right.
And they may be 15 minutes into submitting an application for funds, they're getting
Right.
thrown off. Is that something that should be a high priority for that money?
Well, I mean, I know what my life is like at my house in Sempronius for Wi-Fi, and sometimes my cell phone doesn't work. I have to put it on Wi-Fi in order for it to work. I know that because of the way the houses are situated, or things might not be easy for everyone to get access to it. But I know that there are different ways that they're looking into providing. I know that all the libraries are connected to Wi-Fi, and I know that people can go. I myself went to the library in Moravia in probably trying to think 2010, when I broke my kneecap, or before that, to work on continuing education credits, because we didn't have Wi-Fi.
That access there.
Yes.
Other items that you think should be a priority for the county right now?
Well, working at mental health for 15 years, I got a very good glimpse into some of the difficulties that people have. The schools have a hard time with finding ways to deal with children who have mental health issues. And I myself feel that screening tools are really important, and that if teachers can diagnose children early on with learning disabilities and mental health issues, that early intervention on those things are very, very important.
Do you think there's a role for county government in that? Through Ray Brazzari's programs?
I think having mental health available I think Ithaca, Tompkins County has a very unique situation. They had a 6-story building that was all mental health associated, things. One of them was the CSS people who We're case managers for people
You
with
need to tell us what CSS
Oh,
are, for those who may not know.
Community service people that help manage care for people who can't manage their own care, people who live in group homes and in apartment situations that need help with making sure they go to doctor's appointments, things that they have to do.
Without getting into the complications of redistricting and the census right now, you're running for what is in essence a 2-year term.
Yes.
So what would your goals be over the 2-year period if you were elected?
Well, it's like any new job, you're going to have to learn it from the bottom up. And that's how I learned psychiatry, by being, thrown into it. So I have a lot to learn for government. My priorities are having an open door to people in the community that have, questions about how things are run. I did have a lot of questions when knocking on doors, meeting people, things that they felt were issues for them.
So one of the questions has come up, not only this year, but continually, is how do we raise participation? So before we get into that, have you been attending legislative meetings, or because they're remote, are you just...
I've just been reading the minutes to tell you the truth of all the meetings that have been going on.
So how do we get people to participate more in county government other than when they show up in December because their taxes might be going up?
I know. I have a real soft spot in my heart for civics education, and I really wish that could be a cornerstone for education for children. To learn about government, I really feel that people have a really low opinion of government. They don't respect government probably the way they should, thinking that government will never work for them. And I would like to be able to see children grow up thinking that they are represented and they do have a voice,
And how would you engage your own constituents in those 4 towns?
That's a good question. Knocking on doors has been really an eye-opener to me, and I've met a lot of really interesting people. I guess lines of communication, to me, are the most important things. Listening skills. I think listening skills are really underrated. People really need to step back and to listen to other people, and I really do think that we would find that we had more in common than we really do. So
get to the legislature. Is there any specific committees you would want to be on?
I would like to be on committees that have to do with health education, health issues.
Because you have a background in
Yes, addiction services in the community. I have a health education degree, and I really do believe that if you educate children at a young age, 3 on, early intervention is really important in everything from learning how to take care of your own body to, learning how to assess government.
So one of the assessments that everyone has to make right now is that for 10 plus years at least, there has been this revolving door of a county administrator.
County administrator, right.
We don't have one now. I think the last county administrator was about 18 months ago. I might be off by a couple months. Do you think we should stick with the county administrator system?
Well, I know that they've tried a couple of times to put a county administrator in, and a couple of times it hasn't worked out. I know that there are all kinds of things in the works, possibly having someone come in and advise us on a way to incorporate that into the people that are already working in the government. There's somebody that has been doing the job now for the past 18 months, however, has not been getting, I guess, financial compensation for doing it. And
so you're talking about Aileen McNair-Coleman in the sense of being a placeholder of sorts,
right,
keeping the ship afloat.
Right.
So there is a faction, I would say, in the legislature, it seems from news stories, that have talked about, and again, there doesn't seem to be a majority. And as we know in Washington,
right,
majorities are important, especially right now. But there does seem to be a faction that has proposed, though they may not have given out the details, of going to a county executive,
right,
similar to what you see in Oneida, Monroe, Onondaga
Yes,
County.
Syracuse.
Do you think that's a good idea?
I really don't have a lot of experience to be able to say that I think that's a good idea, but I think that exploring different ways of fulfilling that job are certainly something that should be looked at, the possibilities.
So it sounds, if I'm interpreting this wrong, please correct me. It sounds like you would bring in some outside expertise.
That was one of the solutions
And you think that's
that was proposed. I believe that we should look at all solutions to the problem and to be open-minded about it. And
so the other question that comes up here, and this is a more recent vote, the county, I'm thinking I have the name of the position right, but a deputy county operations officer was appointed, or at least the position was created recently. I think Mr. Strong, as I'm told from the media, opposed creating that deputy position that would be an assistant to the legislature and Ms. Coleman. Do you support that position? Do you oppose that position?
The position
of the deputy county operations officer.
I'm not sure. I have to look into it. I really don't know the issues well enough to say, but I do think that they should look at all ways of filling the position and to come to a consensus among the members, what works for them.
So one of the things that will occur is that we've had the 2020 census last year where we all filled out. If you could do it online, you could do it online if you could get a connection. And that means in 2023 the legislature has to redistrict, or they should.
Right.
They should have for decades, and they have not. That's more editorial on my part.
Right.
But there's two questions that come up with that. The first one is, should the number of districts at 15 stay at 15? Should it get smaller? Should it get larger? What would you do?
Well, I think they have to look at it right off the bat, because that some districts are bigger than they should be, and there are some that are too small. So I really do think that needs to be looked at.
So in part geography-wise, you have four. We interviewed somebody the other day that's at 2 towns. There's others in the cities, obviously.
Right.
So the other issue with the legislature is this issue of weighted voting. And so if you come into the city, their weighted votes are much less than in some of the towns which have these large districts.
Right.
Population-wise. Should weighted voting be changed?
Really don't know much about it, except that I know that Kathy Gore got 6 votes in the town of Sempronius, so I really do think that...
No, I'm sorry, I didn't make myself clear. I'm sorry. I meant weighted voting in the legislature where...
more towns have more...
Yes, I'm sorry. I should not... I'm sorry, I didn't clarify that. So a legislator, for example, the legislator, I think, who represents Cato, I'm going to go up north, has twice the number of votes that, say, the 15th legislative district, which is one of the smallest ones in the center of the city, where your dad and mom used to live. That's why I'll do that, having served with your dad in several positions. Weighted voting there is that legislator, Tim Lattimore, has less weighted voting than Andy Dennison.
It's population.
Yeah. So should that change so it's more 1-for-1? Is my question.
I think 1-for-1 would probably be the best way to go. I like I said, I really don't totally understand the how to change that, and how to manipulate that. And I'm sure that will be revealed to me once I join the legislature. But I think one vote per person probably is a good way to handle it.
So I want to ask you about 2 restructuring issues. One is more close to home with you. You serve on the Sempronius Board of Assessment. We have dozens of assessors in Cayuga County. Do we need dozens of assessors, or should this be something that the county looks at and does one uniform assessment, whether it's for all the towns and villages and includes the city or doesn't include the city? Should there be one system, or is this patchwork of towns and villages makes sense?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Does it make sense?
From your personal experience.
From my personal experience is that you don't want to overburden your assessors, but you don't want your assessors not doing anything too, So I don't know if decreasing the number would increase the difficulties that people have with getting their properties evaluated and getting their properties assessed.
So the same...
I don't know how tight their schedules
So the
are.
same type of question would be asked, do we need all of these, I think it would be 27 highway superintendents and
I know,
highway department? Is that an area where there can be some streamlining?
There's always this thing about having the positions become elected positions or having them be financially supported positions. And that is something that probably should be looked at. You don't want to overdo something. You just want to do just enough, and you don't want to waste resources, but yet you don't want to have what is happening now, that it seems like people have disappeared. There's no people to do the work,
right. So two questions. One's particular to your position, particular race, and one is to the general. If you're elected in if you take office in January, if Eileen McNabb Coleman, who is the current chair, decides to seek re-election, would you be supportive of her?
Yes.
And the other is about how we appoint people in interim. So your race is the perfect race for this question. So Charlie Ripley, who was elected to the legislature, decided to resign last fall and go back to his town supervisor role. There's a couple ways you can replace people. And this seems to come up at least once every 4 or 5 years in the legislature. You can make an appointment, which was done in this case with Mr. Strong. You can hold a special election, or you can wait until the next election cycle. What would you do?
Well, I think they've always replaced, and they've always replaced by party. If the person who resigns is a Republican, they replace the person with a Republican. I think it would depend on where in the course of his position he resigned. I think he only had 1 year left to go.
A little over a year, but it was after holding an election last year.
Right. I think that allowing the people to vote for that position is more important than I think giving someone the position. I think that that's sort of a disadvantage.
So in this particular case, they didn't go out and say, anybody interested in this district, come to the legislature, apply. They just appointed someone.
Right. They just appointed someone. And it took them a while to find someone to appoint.
So were you going to run for this position, whether it was Mr. Ripley, or did you decide when there was an opening to run?
I saw that Mark Strong was running unopposed, and I just thought that was wrong. Okay. I just thought that he should have an opponent, and it was something that I was interested in trying, and that's why I decided to do it.
So I want to go back to COVID for
okay.
a moment. How do you think Cayuga County has responded as a government to dealing with the pandemic?
I think having lived through it and having lived through the remote learning with my grandchildren and the difficulties that they had when they were going to Herman Ave, I guess, when they first closed down. That was I thought that they did a good job, considering it was just kind of thrown at us, in March.
Would you have done anything differently?
Would I have done anything differently? Probably no, because I think it was a learning experience. I think we didn't know what we didn't have, or we didn't know what we didn't know when it first happened. And I think that everything that happened was a learning experience. And I think that we did learn from that. And I think this year has been a lot easier as far as keeping kids in school and keeping schools open than that first year. We just couldn't do it.
By the way, how old are your grandchildren?
They're 12.
Okay. Twins?
Twins,
Twins, okay.
boy and a girl. Yeah.
So one of the issues that may face the legislature come January, but it may come sooner, is this issue of mandating a vaccination for county employees. Obviously, the state,
Right.
you're in healthcare, you know what Governor Hochul has done. Should county employees be vaccinated and mandated to do that?
I totally believe in mandates. I think that Mr. Biden got on TV and he implored people to get the vaccine and do the right thing. And of course, people didn't do the right thing, you know. So I think that the next step is to mandate. And I think mandating really takes the onus off a lot of businesses that would really like to ask for a mandate, but would not ask for a mandate. And I think that they work. I think mandates work.
But for county employees, you would go there.
For county employees, I would. Yes,
Speaking of county
definitely.
employees, they're in a building that has been in question for at least 24 years, it seems, as to its functionality.
Right.
What would you do about would you keep the county office building? Would you tear it down? Would you build something new? This is the unending
I know, it's
question.
been there for so long. Really, I mean, I guess I would have to talk to somebody at the planning board, you know, to find out what the problems are with the building. You know, I know it's old. It's a very old building, and
if the county decided that building is not useful anymore, would you move county? There's been talk about moving county operations to County House Road, and many legislators have said no, they want to keep it in the city because of bus routes and whatnot.
Right.
What would your preference be?
I really couldn't say. I certainly don't want people to be put out. I don't know the issues as far as what the difficulties are with the building, but relocating it, I'm sure, is a political thing for people having to commute somewhere else to work. I don't know what the issues are, but I certainly wouldn't want people to be working in an unsafe building or a building that was not, you know, going to be comfortable for them.
So one last question, a series of questions, maybe one or two. You are at the foot of the lake, depending on
Both lakes.
Both lakes. So you would have two different lakes, Skinny Atlas. The other day we had Mr. Batman on. He's got Owasco Cayuga.
Right.
You would have
Cayuga.
Owasco Skinny Atlas. What do you think should be done when it comes to water quality and specifically blue algae and how we deal with that?
Well, you know, I just sat in on the public meeting for the lake plan, the 5-year plan that is being implemented right now, and I was really impressed with the positive numbers that they were getting with the nitrogen and the phosphorus, which is the cause of the algae. The numbers have gone down considerably in the waterways that they studied, 12 waterways.
Should Cayuga County as a government make more of an investment in water quality issues?
I would think so. I mean, I think there's nothing more important than the quality of our water.
So, as I often do with candidates at the end, it's not a question you have to talk to me about. It's a question you can go out there.
Okay.
Why should voters in the 9th Legislative District, which includes Niles, Moravia, Sempronius, and Summerhill, why should they vote for Geraldine Germano-Yaw?
Okay. Well, I think that I bring a lot of experience to the job. I was an Army brat for 21 years of my life, and I experienced a lot of things. I graduated from high school in Germany, and I worked for 43 years in the medical field. I worked at Auburn Hospital. I worked at Cortland Hospital. I worked at Cortland State at the Student Health Services, and 15 years at Mental Health in Ithaca, New York. I think that all those experiences I bring to the job, and plus living in Sempronius for 45 years, I really feel like I know my neighbors. When I first moved in, I didn't know who was a Democrat, who was a Republican, and I have learned to love my community and want to give back, and I would hope that you would give me the opportunity to try to give back to my community, and I think more women need to participate in politics. So thank you for considering me.
Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate it on behalf of the college for
Thank you.
participating in this forum. We have had Cayuga County Legislative candidate Geraldine Germano-Yaw, who is in the studio to talk to us about her candidacy for the 9th Legislative District. As we said at the beginning, Legislator Mark Strong, who was appointed to this position within the last year, declined to participate in this series of forums. We'll be back in just a moment with the circuit judge candidates. John Boodleman and Ben Sussman will be here to present their credentials to you in a different format than we normally do for forums, but we have done for city court races and other races over the years. They are running for the seat being vacated by Mark H. Vandrick, who has decided not to seek a third 10-year term to surrogates court. A quick programming note or two. We will be back on Thursday the 14th because the college has assessment day on the 12th with our next in a series of candidate forums with Jeremy Boyer asking the questions and my moderating. We'll have the candidates for the 11th Legislative District, the first of 3 legislative forums with candidates located in the city of Auburn. First-term legislator Elaine Daly is seeking re-election on the Democratic and Working Families lines, and she's being challenged by Mario Campanella Jr., who is on the Republican and Conservative lines. We'll be back the following week with 2 other forums for the city districts. Again, the 13th and the 15th. These are, oddly enough, one of the few open seats that with no incumbents running this year. We'll finish with the Auburn City Council race on Tuesday, October 26th, when we will have all 4 candidates in the studio. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send your questions for future Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page shows, which return on Election Day in about 3 weeks. You can send them to cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. I want to thank you for watching. Remind you to go out and vote, whether it's early voting or on November 2nd. We hope you have a good night, have a great tomorrow, and be safe.